All right, hello YouTube. This is a balmy New Year's Day here in eastern Oklahoma. I still can't get used to the lack of winter here. I grew up in Wyoming, as I've said before. And today, I'm just going to talk about Stranger Things in its entirety. I know I have some things to criticize about it, but also to praise about it. I just finished watching it with my daughter and my wife. My son's not with me at the moment, but we all started watching this when it came out. Excuse me, I'm trying to navigate a bunch of shit here all at once and appreciate the deforestation of my neighbors on this field, which I think is absolutely crazy. It's eroding all around me now. It's kind of foolish, but you know, that's this kind of mindset that if it grows, cut it down. It's in the way of progress, right? So, enough about that. Anyway, the series came out about 9 years ago, and me, my wife being Gen X, also being of that age group of the kids in the movie. You know, it's set in the 1980s. If you haven't seen it, if you don't want any spoilers, I just finished the very last one. And of course, if you don't want any spoilers, you know, just save this for later, okay? Because I'm about to get into some of it. I'm going to try to avoid too many spoilers. It's not really too much about the content of it specifically. But here I go. When it first debuted, something jumped in the water, probably a deer. Either way, one of the 7 dogs I have with me. So 3 are neighbors, but they've adopted me. So anyway, the 80s nostalgia was a big thing. And the timing of it was very, very good. Strangely enough, and I'm not going to make this political, but Trump coming into power was sort of a breath of fresh air at the time. An outsider. There's a little bit of the Americana, the resurgence, the confidence. And I'm talking before it got to COVID. Despite the way the media presents things, there was an overall feeling amongst the majority of Americans that there was a little bit of confidence in our system that it could work again. Now, again, I'm not giving Trump credit for everything or vilifying him like so many are doing all the time. I have my own issues with him, and that's separate. I'm just saying that kind of timed very well. I remember somebody saying to my kids once it was like the 80s again, but with smartphones, okay? So, yeah, there's that. The series itself did an excellent job with music, with entertainment, with clothing, with ideas that are representative of what we say with like Gen X, that were very familiar to me, that were very alien to my kids, which kind of surprised me how alien so much of the 80s is to the current generation. And taking a hard look at it, I'm like, it's kind of fun to imagine taking my kids and if I could teleport to the 80s and see how they would react without cell phone technology, without instant access to everything, with this modern world for all its conveniences and weaknesses. There's a lot of weaknesses in it. And but anyway, on the series, overall, it was very good. There were things that stood out very, very well, but there was a lot of things that were wrong. When they tried to insert modern woke ideology into this, that's when it got really stupid. I think a recent season 5 where the character Will Byers comes out with this long monologue, and it was so out of place. It killed the immersion. Now, there's 2 camps on this. Well, there's 3, I would say. The normal camp, those of us in the middle who are kind of independent thinking and don't really give a shit, versus the extremes. You have some who are like, you know, there was no homosexuals in the 80s, not in my church, you know, that kind of shit. And you know who I'm talking about. And then there's the other extreme where they're disappointed that him and Mike weren't secretly having sex, you know, where they were not pushing it hard enough. These woke, radical leftists who are really very tyrannical in their approach and thinking, who went from, ironically, they have almost proven the arguments of the religious right of the 80s. You know, the religious right of the 80s were just as tyrannical in their own way, But they were warning, say, hey, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, and here we are. And for those of you who agree with the radical left ideology and where you have to insert strong, empowered black female, girl boss, boss babe, you have to insert homosexuality, you have to insert every aspect of the most disgusting, vile, and dishonest racial, gender-based woke ideology. And of course it's Netflix and it's Hollywood, they're going to do it. We kind of saw them doing it incrementally throughout the series. Now, here's the thing. This character gives like a 6-minute monologue on why he's gay, and they're on the verge of saving the world from a hideous monster and worlds colliding. And I'm like, what? That's a priority? That warrants 6 minutes of your time? And for those of you who were not around during the 80s, that was not a thing. That was the moment that really, not just that moment, there's a few. There's an interracial relationship between the two teens. That was not common. That was kind of scrutinized. There's a lot of the girl boss theme was starting to really pop up. The guys can be bumbling idiots at times. Most of the guys can be bumbling idiots. Out of touch, right? And that's simply not very reflective of the way things were. That takes the immersion, my immersion into, oh, look at these dogs. They're having a good time. I don't know if you can see them. They are having a good time. And that little dog, Ollie, he's a funny one. Anyhow, so that just kind of killed the immersion for a lot of us. Because in the 80s, we did not give a shit. Identity politics was not a thing in the 80s. We didn't fixate on race, religion, gender. You made your friends and they were your friends. We were concerned about what record, cassette tape, whatever was going to come out, what our musical tastes were going to be. We were concerned about, hey, we're going to eat, where are we going to get a job? And things that were normal were not shunned. For example, it's Nancy, the character Nancy, comes into this boss babe thing later near the end, and it's like, she's going to make her way, her destiny, and marriage is for suckers, that kind of thing. Nonsense. It's nonsense now, and it was not a thing then. Marriage was more or less celebrated. Young people looked forward to it. They looked forward to finding somebody who was right for them. Of course, it's not perfect, and there's a lot of people now that would, excuse me, I got to get a drink of this coffee here. My daughter made this coffee and got the Harry Potter butterbeer creamer for it. I don't know, fuck, we'll see. Yeah, it's what I expected. It's okay. So, they have the girl boss bullshit going on, where all these traditional values are considered toxic, bad, irrelevant, outdated. That wasn't the case in the 80s. We're talking about the 80s in particular. A lot of the problems we have today are a result of the modern world, not the old one. Funny how civilizations prospered, thrived, had strong families. Not saying that everyone is perfect. Every civilization has its issues, just like every family does, or every individual does. But they tended to work, okay? Let me switch this around. So, the immersion was killed when he did that, and he gave his monologue. End of the world. Now, mind you, you got to think about who writes this shit. Do these people, or many of these people Gen X, some might have been. How many of these people were there? But let's not forget, we're looking at, and I've seen this earlier, I'm going to compare this, for those of you in the military understand what I'm going to say here. There was a time when PTSD was something only heard about with severe trauma, military veterans, things like this. And before some of you guys quote the DSM-4, DSM-5 or whatever in psychology, yeah, I understand. There's been a lot of people in professional scientific circles, medical circles, who have towed the line for the radical left for a long time now, who are revisionist historians, scientists, whatever. They have an agenda. So don't think that your your citation of a scholarly source is enough these days. It still requires critical thinking and scrutiny from individuals who can actually fucking think. So anyway, that's a whole different subject. And the caffeine and ADHD is kicking in. And I'm not ADHD, but I do bounce around. So, anyhow, the immersion was killed when he did this. It was totally killed. It was like, okay, we're back to the modern era. We're back to celebrating victimhood. Celebrating victimhood. How can we be? Who's got the stronger victim points? That's what this really turned into. I'm keeping an eye on my dog, by the way, sorry. So she's the wanderer, as we know. And people did not care back then. It wasn't their focus, like I said. And that's what took us out of the past. Now, getting back to the reference to the military, trauma, challenges, life or death, everything else becomes moot. Nobody gives a shit that Will is a butt fucker. Nobody gives a rat's ass. Who cares? Nobody cares. It's like a good battle buddy to be like, hey, you need some lube? It's gonna hurt, man. It's gonna hurt. Here's some lube. You know, you got, hey, my fucked up military fucking sense of humor kicks in, and I'm not apologizing for it. So hopefully, some of you will get me, some of you will not, and that's okay. Now, going back to the situation, the writers in their offices somewhere in LA. It's kind of like when they did the Walking Dead series back in the day. They always had the racial, strong, empowered black female. You always had the gay couples that were surviving the apocalypse. These motherfuckers can barely, all they know is interior decorating, and now they're gonna survive in a world full of killers, ex-soldiers, and no, they're not. They're gonna fucking die. These farmers I live around, they're gonna be, there goes a dog, holy shit. Huh? Hope they're okay. Having some strange wildlife around here lately. Either they're hunting something. So there goes Lily, my little army tank. Raven, you're staying with me, girl. See how unpredictable this shit is? I love that. Dogs are great. I'm gonna walk through this shitty little ditch here. So, but these writers, whether it's The Walking Dead, all these writers in Hollywood, they have a very small worldview. Unfortunately, they're very smug, and they believe they know what's best for everybody else. They believe they understand everything. So, they believe you stupid. And they'll just throw MAGA at you. You're just all MAGA right wing. It's like, no. Many of us are independent thinkers. Many of us are not MAGA. We just think for our fucking selves. So, they're going to paint your dissenting opinions as intolerant and even violent. They confuse words and ideas that they disagree with as violence. So when they write these shows, they compare Will's struggle with where he puts his penis to the end of the world. Think about this. They have elevated their agenda as the safety of the world depends upon it. How fucking narcissistic and self-important is that? How stupid is that? Nobody gives a shit about where he puts his genitals. Hey, put that shit away. If you're thinking about your emotional relationships, hey, fuck. When you're in the military and you're away from your wife and kids, you gotta stow that shit somewhere, you know? I like that expression. I just push that shit down until it gives me cancer. You know? Yeah, you can't fucking deal with that. Hey, anybody seen my dog? Fuck. Raven, where'd you go, pup? There she is, okay. She blends in. She's solid black and she just blends in. So, they equate their political struggles, their struggles with their sexual identity, as somehow equatable to the fate of the world. That's how they see this. It's complete nonsense. That's very revealing as to who these people are. These are people who've never endured any real hardships, no troubles, no issues. So yeah, of course they're going to be this way. Now, on the flip side, of course we see the elements of the lesbian relationship. Once they did that, her character kind of lost a little bit of her spark, her spunk, her uniqueness. They actually made her more generic. You know, I think she's, what's her name's daughter from Kill Bill? Uma Thurman's daughter. Maya Hawke, yes. And Ethan Hawke's daughter. Once they focused on her lesbian relationship, you notice her character sort of became generic. They got something going on. Hopefully they're not getting hurt or killed. But anyway, so there's those areas I just wanted to make that point about, and that is the bad is there. The good is also in this series, and overall I recommend this series, and overall I like it. There was a speech by Dustin in the end, in the very last season, his graduation speech, and it was Gen X in a nutshell. It was perfect. There was Eddie playing fucking Master of Puppets in the Upside Down. That was fucking Gen X. That was the era. I would say this whole modern spin where we try to say, how are we a victim? How are we a victim? That's alien to our experience in the 80s. Top Gun Maverick showcased this, where doing what's impossible, overcoming the odds, going against the odds and still finding a way to win. You work hard enough, and I'm not talking about for the corporation, by the way. Hey, where you going, Ollie? You kicking some ass? Let me see if I don't know if you can see him. Yeah, I think maybe he's kicking some ass. Getting a drink, go back in. You left your brothers there for a fight. So I don't know. I still hear yelping. Big dog even ran. Hopefully it's not a bigger dog. So yeah, there were some good moments. A lot of nostalgia, a lot of positive things. And I will say one thing they did get right, and I'm attacking the right on this, was the religious right. The D&D thing. Yes, I can remember D&D back in the 80s, and I remember those boomer religious loonies talking about how it makes you religiously sick and how evil it was, and how terrible it was, and it was all devil worshipping and all this bullshit they made up about it, made it into a cult thing. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I can remember some of these people coming up to me and saying, well, you guys know those cult games, they do cutting each other and all that shit. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It helped my creative writing in school. I was reading at a collegiate level when I was 12 because of the D&D books. Me and my friends would play a game. We weren't out drinking and doing drugs and getting into shit, Sometimes we got into shit. But you were definitely rebellious. But it made us good at it. We practiced our basic math skills, our reading comprehension, our creative writing, a little bit of acting in this, a little bit of role play. It was fantastic. It was a perfect game for our generation. It expressed things, and I like that they keep that in there. They just cannot. One thing though, you didn't have a lot of girls playing D&D back then. Oh fuck no, you were a nerd. You're a fucking dork. And a bad thing about the 80s, a bad thing, was the cliques and classes. You had the jocks, you had the nerds. Everybody had a case system, a sort of a case system. And I can remember, for example, I was a poor kid and I was wearing Lee jeans, and a bunch of snobby girls would not let me sit at the same table as them because they were all wearing Levi's and I was wearing Lee jeans. That's how absurd some of that shit was in the 80s. And, now, like when I became a drug addict and she got knocked up at 17, I'm like, life sucks. So, yeah, there's good and there's bad in the series. Overall, I recommend the series. I still think it's got mostly good storytelling. Don't worry too much about what people on either extreme is saying. You got the weird LGBTQ freak show. They call everybody else Nazi, but they're the ones who are like, no dissent of thought whatsoever. Ignore those fucking weirdos. They can't stop shoving their fucking purple gay dicks down people's throats. That's their opinion. That's a metaphor for their opinion. And of course, also ignore the radicals who want to vilify every little scene. Like I said, there was no gay people in the 80s. It's like, yeah, they were. We just didn't give a shit. We didn't think about it. We didn't talk about it. Half the time we didn't talk about our own sexuality, Now, there were times me and my friends would watch those videos of those chicks would work out, hit the weight room in their spandex. That was pretty damn good. Yeah, it was, of course we're normal. That's everything. Now that's vilified. Fuck. Being loaded with testosterone for action, and we know action comes mostly from the guys, man. There was a scene where Hopper was running through a hallway, blasting these rogue army elements with an M16. I thought that was pretty cool. Although, I'm gonna say something. There was one scene, and I'm probably gonna end it with this because I'm 20 minutes into this motherfucker. There was one scene that made me uncomfortable. And I forgot what season it was. They had two opposing army units with these scientists. And you had one group come in, I think a Ranger battalion, these MPs, and these were American soldiers killing each other. That hit a nerve. That bothered me. I was surprised at how emotional my reaction was to it. It was very, very weird to me. I was kind of like, it just unnerved me. Being someone who was in the military before, and by the way, there's this vilification of soldiers oftentimes in there. What the fuck? Are they carrying a corpse? They got a rabbit or something. Fuck. I'll have to track them down. But anyway, very, very sad. And it was like hard for me to tell that, you know, and by the way, most soldiers I've known in the military, yes, you have assholes and creeps and people with God complexes everywhere. But most of the guys I knew were like everybody else, trying to do a good job, looking out for their family. Most of the soldiers I knew were honorable people. So that being said, I gotta find what these guys killed. I seen one of the little dogs carrying, it looks like a rabbit. So anyway, adios. By the way, for all you heathens out there, Yule's coming up this Saturday, and I will see you later. Adios.